Sometimes, the person you trust the most is the one holding the knife behind your back. They smile, they kiss you goodbye, they say I love you, and still they lie. This is the story of a woman who believed her marriage was built on love until one small discovery shattered her world, exposing the truth she never wanted to see. But what came after wasn't revenge, it was rebirth. This is the story of Maya, and how the crack in her foundation became the doorway to her freedom. There are mornings that start like any other, and yet, somehow, they mark the beginning of everything that will change your life forever. For Maya Thompson, that morning felt perfectly ordinary, almost beautiful in its simplicity. The sun was kind that day, spilling golden light through the kitchen window as she poured 2 cups of coffee. The smell of toasted bread filled the air. Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, dressed neatly in his navy blue suit, the one he wore whenever he had an important meeting. He looked handsome, calm, confident. He smiled at her in that easy way that made her believe, once again, that life was good. They spoke about little things, his meeting downtown, the school play their daughter was preparing for, the groceries she planned to buy later. It was a picture of peace. The kind of morning people post on social media with captions like simple joys or grateful hearts. When he stood up to leave, Ethan leaned in, kissed her forehead, and said, "Don't wait up for dinner, love. I might be a little late tonight." And she smiled like she always did. She didn't question him. She never had a reason to. For years, their marriage had been built on trust. There were no suspicious glances, no jealousy, no fights that lasted too long. Maya believed in the man she married, the man who once promised her forever. When the door closed behind him, she cleaned the cups, humming softly to a song she barely remembered. The house was quiet, only the ticking of the wall clock keeping her company. That was when the idea came, simple and kind. She thought, maybe I should clean the car for him today. He's been so busy. He'll be happy when he sees it spotless. She grabbed a bucket, some soap, and a towel, tied her hair into a bun, and walked out to the driveway. The air smelled fresh, and a few leaves danced lazily across the concrete. The SUV stood there, dusty from days of commuting. She smiled. It felt good doing something thoughtful. As she wiped the mirrors and vacuumed the seats, her mind wandered to happier times, road trips, laughter, music turned up too loud, Ethan's hand resting on hers as they drove through the city at night. Every memory was soaked in love and familiarity. There was nothing, to suggest that something dark was hiding beneath that surface. After a while, she decided to clean the inside compartments. She reached over to open the glove box, just another small detail in her perfect plan to make him smile. The sound of it clicking open was ordinary, but what she saw inside wasn't. There, tucked neatly among car papers and an old phone charger, was a small box of condoms. At first, she froze. Her eyes blinked, once, twice, as if they were lying to her. Then she picked it up slowly, her hands trembling just a little. It was new, sealed, fresh from the store. A brand she didn't recognize. They hadn't used protection in years, not since they'd been trying for another baby. Her mind spun, searching for reason. Maybe he bought it by mistake? Maybe a friend left it in the car? Maybe. But deep inside, where truth always hides, a quiet voice whispered, "You already know." Her knees felt weak. She sat back in the driver's seat, clutching the box like it could somehow explain itself. For a long time, she just stared at it, hoping that if she looked hard enough, it would turn into something else. Something harmless, something that didn't mean what she feared. The air felt heavier now. The sunlight outside seemed cruel in its brightness. She placed the box back exactly where she found it, closed the glove compartment, and sat there in silence. Her breathing was shallow, her heart pounding in her ears. She could almost hear her own thoughts screaming, "No, not Ethan. Not him." When she finally stepped out of the car, the world around her hadn't changed. Birds still chirped, neighbors still passed by. But for her, everything had shifted. Inside the house, she sat on the couch where she and Ethan had watched countless movies together, where he had once kissed her during thunderstorms and whispered, "You're my peace." Now, that same couch felt foreign. Her hands shook. Her heart ached in a way she didn't think possible. But she didn't cry, not yet. It was too soon for tears. The pain was still trying to understand itself. As the day went on, she moved mechanically, folding clothes, washing dishes. But every sound around her seemed distant, every memory replayed like a cruel film she couldn't pause. By evening, when Ethan returned home, he smiled and kissed her cheek like nothing had happened. And Maya smiled back. She didn't mention the box. Not yet. Because somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. Something cold, quiet, and sharp had awakened. She didn't know it then, but that small discovery, that tiny box in the glove compartment, would change everything. Forever. Soft piano fades, and narrator whispers, "It's strange, isn't it? How the beginning of the end can look so peaceful. How a single ordinary morning can carry the weight of everything that will break you." They say heartbreak doesn't always come with shouting or thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a whisper that slices through your soul. That night, after finding the box in the car, Maya barely slept. She turned from side to side, eyes wide open in the darkness. The clock ticked louder than usual, and every second felt like a hammer striking her chest. Ethan lay beside her, breathing calmly, the same rhythm she had once found comforting. But that night, each breath from him felt like a lie. When morning came, she got up early. She made breakfast the same way she always did: toast, scrambled eggs, black coffee. She smiled when he entered the kitchen, but her heart was breaking behind that smile. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," she said softly. "Just tired." She watched him eat. Every movement felt strange. The way he stirred his coffee, the way he checked his phone, the way he kissed her before leaving. For years, those were the small things that made her feel loved. But now each one carried a shadow. When he left, the silence in the house grew thick. She sat by the window, clutching her cup, staring at nothing. Her mind replayed everything, every conversation, every late-night work call, every "babe, I'll be home soon." And slowly, the puzzle started to make sense. All the nights he came home smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. The sudden gym membership. The new cologne. The way he turned his phone face down at dinner. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her whole body shook. Not with anger, but with disbelief. Because it wasn't just betrayal she felt, it was confusion. How could a man who said, "I love you" so gently carry such darkness in his heart? She walked back to the car later that day, almost like she needed to prove to herself that she hadn't imagined it. Her hands trembled as she opened the glove compartment again. The box was still there, untouched, perfectly new. She picked it up, staring at it as if it were a stranger's face. It wasn't just a box of rubber and foil. It was the truth she never asked for, the evidence that the life she believed in was built on lies. The tears came then, slow and heavy. They rolled down her cheeks and fell onto her lap, one after another, like drops of something ancient breaking free. She whispered to herself, "Why, Ethan? Why?" But the air gave no answer. That night, she didn't confront him. She couldn't. She wasn't ready to hear the words that would confirm her worst fear. Instead, she began to watch him. The next few days were like living in a movie where she already knew the ending. Every "I love you" sounded rehearsed. Every phone call made her suspicious. Every meeting ran late, scraped her heart open. She noticed small things she had never paid attention to before. The new aftershave, the extra shirt in his car, the tired excuses about business trips that didn't exist. Maya started writing everything down: dates, times, patterns, not out of revenge, but because she needed to see the truth. She needed to stop doubting her own reality. One evening, when Ethan came home late again, she asked softly, "Rough day?" He sighed, loosening his tie. "You wouldn't believe it. We're so busy at work." He kissed her forehead and went straight to the shower. As she stood there listening to the water run, she realized she no longer felt love, only distance. The kind that comes when two hearts stop beating for each other, even if they still share a roof. Later that night, when he fell asleep, Maya sat by the window again. Outside, the city lights glowed faintly, like stars that had lost their shine. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. eyes swollen, face pale, a woman lost between truth and hope. And in that quiet moment, something inside her changed. She decided she would no longer be the woman who waited for apologies that would never come. She would no longer drown in her silence. If Ethan thought she would stay weak, he was wrong. The betrayal had broken something in her. But it had also awakened something else. A quiet, cold strength. The kind that rises not from anger, but from pain too deep to explain. As the night stretched on, she whispered to herself, if he wants to play with fire, then maybe it's time he learns what it feels like to burn. And that was the moment Maya stopped being a victim. She didn't know what she would do next. But she knew this. Ethan had just created a woman who would no longer suffer in silence. Soft piano fades and narrator's voice lowers. The heart can forgive anything until it sees the proof. After that, forgiveness turns into fire. Heartbreak has a sound. It's not the sound of screaming or breaking glass. It's the sound of silence. That's what filled Maya's home for the next few days, silence. She didn't cry anymore. She didn't ask questions. She just watched. Ethan still kissed her every morning, still smiled, still played the part of a loving husband. But Maya could see through it now. Every glance, every gesture, every lie wrapped in affection, she noticed them all. Something had changed inside her. The woman who once trusted blindly was gone. In her place stood someone colder, quieter, more aware. At night, while Ethan scrolled through his phone in bed, Maya would turn to her side and pretend to sleep, but her mind was wide awake. She was no longer asking, why would he do this? She was asking, what am I going to do about it? The answer came unexpectedly, a small, sharp idea that grew darker the longer she thought about it. It happened one afternoon when she was cleaning the kitchen. She looked at the chili jar on the counter, red, fiery, potent, and a thought flickered across her mind like lightning. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. She just whispered, you want to play? Let's play. The next morning, she drove to a small grocery store outside her neighborhood. She didn't want anyone recognizing her. There, she bought a large pack of dried habanero chili powder, the kind that could set your tongue on fire with just a pinch. When she got home, she wore gloves. Her movements were calm, almost surgical. She opened the box of condoms she had found in the glove compartment. Slowly, carefully, she poured a little chili powder into each one, twisting the tops closed again, the same way she had seen Ethan twist lies into their marriage. The smell burned her nose, but she didn't stop. Her hands were steady, her heart cold. When she was done, she placed the box back into the glove compartment, same spot, same angle, same order. Everything looked untouched. Then she took off the gloves, washed her hands, and stared at her reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back wasn't weak anymore. She wasn't begging for answers or waiting for honesty. She had become someone Ethan could never predict, someone who had nothing left to lose. That night, Ethan came home late again. He smelled faintly of expensive perfume, one she didn't wear. He kissed her cheek, said he was exhausted, and disappeared into the bathroom. Maya sat at the dining table, her eyes following him until the door shut. The air between them was heavy, like two ghosts pretending to be human. When he finally came out, she looked up and said softly, I missed you. He smiled faintly. I missed you too. But she could see the lie dancing behind his eyes. And for the first time, instead of pain, she felt a strange calm. The kind that comes when you stop expecting anything from someone. In the following days, she said nothing. She didn't argue, didn't accuse, didn't check his phone. She acted normal, cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, kept their routine alive. But inside, she was waiting for the day the truth would burn him, literally. And soon that day would come. One evening, she noticed Ethan dressing up after dinner, shirt ironed, hair combed, a faint whiff of cologne. Another meeting, she asked. Yeah, he said, not looking at her. Just some late paperwork. Maya smiled faintly. Don't work too hard. He kissed her on the forehead and left. She stood by the window watching his car pull out of the driveway. The same car she had cleaned so lovingly days ago. The same car that now carried his secret and his punishment. When the taillights disappeared into the night, Maya exhaled deeply, whispering to herself, "May the truth find you, the same way I found the lies." And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel helpless. She felt powerful, not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she finally realized she didn't need his love, his apologies, or his lies to define her. She was reclaiming her silence and turning it into strength. Soft instrumental builds, slow piano chords blend with faint wind sounds. Sometimes, when the world takes everything from you, the only thing left to hold on to is your dignity. And Maya was holding hers tighter than ever. Ethan drove through the city with one hand on the wheel and the other resting casually on his lap. His mind wasn't on work. It was on her, Lydia, the woman who made him feel young again, or so he believed. She was waiting for him at the Grandview Hotel, the same place where they had been meeting for months. He parked the car and checked his reflection in the mirror, adjusting his tie. To anyone watching, he looked like a hard-working man on a late-night business run. But inside, he knew he was living a double life, one lie layered over another. As he reached for the box of condoms in the glove compartment, a faint smirk crossed his lips. Everything looked normal, unopened, untouched. He took one, slid it into his pocket, and headed into the hotel. Upstairs, Lydia greeted him with her usual teasing smile. She wore a silk robe and smelled of jasmine, the scent of temptation. "Long day?" she asked, wrapping her arms around his neck. Ethan nodded, kissing her forehead. He had no idea that his night was about to turn into a storm. Hours later, as the night deepened, a muffled sound of pain echoed from the hotel room. Sharp, sudden, panicked. "Ethan!" Lydia's voice trembled. "What the hell is this?" Ethan jumped up, confused, sweating, his body burning in ways he couldn't explain. He gasped, stumbled backward, clutching himself. The sensation was unbearable, like fire beneath his skin. "What's happening?" Lydia cried, backing away, terrified. Ethan could barely speak. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. He ran to the bathroom, splashing cold water over himself, his face twisted in pain and shock. The mirror reflected a man unrecognizable, desperate, humiliated, terrified. Lydia was shouting behind him, half angry, half scared. "Did you do something? Is this a joke?" But Ethan couldn't answer. All he could think was, how? How could this happen? And then, suddenly he remembered. The car. The glove compartment. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. Did Maya? No, she wouldn't. Would she? He stumbled out of the hotel, barely buttoning his shirt, shame and panic wrapping around him like a curse. The drive home felt endless. His mind was chaos, flashes of guilt, fear, and the cold image of his wife's calm face. By the time he pulled into the driveway, dawn was breaking. He sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the house, his home, his lie, his trap. Inside, Maya was in the kitchen making breakfast, the soft scent of coffee filling the air. When he walked in, her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. "Long night?" she asked softly. Her tone was gentle, but her gaze was something else. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even suspicion. It was knowledge. Ethan hesitated. His throat tightened. He wanted to ask, "Did you do it?" But how could he? How could he accuse her without admitting the truth? He forced a small smile. "Yeah, just a late meeting." Maya nodded slowly. She turned back to the stove, stirring the eggs, her voice calm, almost too calm. "You should take a shower," she said. "You look flushed." Ethan froze. The word cut deep. Flushed. He stood there for a moment, uncertain whether she knew or if he was just losing his mind. But when she turned around and looked at him, her eyes held a softness and something darker beneath it. "Breakfast will be ready soon," she added and smiled. That smile, it wasn't warm. It wasn't fake either. It was the smile of someone who had seen the truth and decided to let silence do the rest. Ethan walked away, his body trembling. Each step felt heavier than the last. In the shower, he let the water run over him, but nothing could wash away the guilt. The fire on his skin was gone, but inside the burning had just begun. Meanwhile, Maya sat at the table, sipping her coffee. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't proud. She just felt still. She didn't need to confront him anymore. The truth had already done that for her. Soft music swells, the sound of piano and wind blending together. Some betrayals don't need revenge. They destroy themselves in silence. Maya finally understood that. And in that quiet moment, she smiled not out of joy, but out of freedom. Ethan used to love mornings. They used to mean purpose, coffee, meetings, laughter, goals. Now, every sunrise felt like a spotlight on his shame. The incident at the Grandview had spread like wildfire. Colleagues whispered behind his back. Lydia had stopped answering his calls. And every time he looked in the mirror, he saw a man he didn't recognize, a man stripped of pride, of respect, of everything that once made him whole. At work, people tried not to stare, but gossip has a way of cutting deeper than any blade. They knew. Everyone knew. And Maya, she said nothing. That silence was the worst punishment of all. Every night when he came home, she greeted him with the same soft tone, the same polite smile. She made dinner, asked about his day, and never once mentioned the word betrayal. It was as if she had erased all emotion from her voice. No anger, no tears, no confrontation. Only calm. And that calm was louder than any scream. One night, unable to stand the weight anymore, Ethan broke the silence. "Maya," he said, his voice trembling. "We need to talk." She looked up from her book, her eyes steady. "About what?" He hesitated. "About us." A faint smile touched her lips. "They're still in us?" The question hit him like a slap. He swallowed hard, guilt washing over him. "Maya, I made a mistake. I was stupid. I don't even know why." She cut him off gently. "You don't have to explain, Ethan. I already know." He froze. "Then why haven't you said anything?" Maya placed her book down and leaned back in her chair. "Because sometimes words are useless. You can't argue with truth. It just sits there, waiting." Her voice was calm, but her eyes glistened. Not with anger, but with exhaustion. Ethan wanted to reach for her hand, but he couldn't. It felt wrong, like trying to touch light after living in darkness too long. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Please believe me." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Do you know what sorry sounds like to a broken heart?" she asked softly. "It sounds like rain on an empty house. You can hear it, but it doesn't change anything." Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, he realized that forgiveness wasn't something he could earn. It was something he had already lost. Scene shift, days pass. The office empties out. Ethan's desk looks bare. A resignation letter sits on top of it. The company had decided to let him go. Too much scandal, too much noise. He packed his things slowly. The framed photo of Maya, the one from their trip to Arizona, the only picture where she was laughing freely. He traced her smile with his thumb, his chest tightening. He had traded that laughter for an illusion. And now, all he had left were echoes. At home, Maya was sitting by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. When he walked in, she didn't look surprised. "I lost my job," he said quietly. She nodded. "I heard." "You heard?" he asked, confused. "I get the company newsletter," she said simply. Then, after a pause, "Ethan, maybe this is what needed to happen." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned to face him fully now. "For years, we lived like our lives were made of stone. Perfect. Unbreakable. But even the strongest walls can crack if you build them over lies." He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. She was right. Maya stood up and walked past him toward the kitchen. "Dinner's on the table," she said. Her tone was soft, but there was something final in it. He followed her with his eyes, the woman he once thought he owned, now a stranger whose strength frightened him. As she placed the dishes down, she looked at him one last time and said quietly, "Ethan, I don't hate you. I just don't trust you anymore." And love without trust is just a story we tell ourselves to sleep at night. She left the table and walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. The sound of that door, small, soft, final, echoed through the whole house. The narration slows. The camera pans out. Ethan sitting alone at the dinner table, untouched food in front of him. His face is hollow, his eyes distant. Guilt doesn't scream. It whispers in the dark, reminding you of every face you've hurt, every word you can't take back. That night, Ethan finally realized something Maya had known all along. Some cracks can never be repaired. Maya hadn't been sleeping well. Even after Ethan's confession, after the chaos had settled into silence, peace still refused to come. Revenge had burned bright for a moment and then gone out, leaving only smoke behind. She wasn't proud of what she'd done, not anymore. But she wasn't sorry either. She had only balanced a scale that Ethan had broken. Days passed like shadows. And then one morning, as she sipped her tea and stared out the window, she picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd kept for weeks. Daniel's number. Daniel, Lydia's husband, the other half of the heartbreak. She didn't know what she expected. Maybe anger, maybe silence. But when he answered, his voice was low, heavy, and tired. Maya. Yes, she said quietly. It's me. There was a long pause, then a sigh. I've been waiting for this call, he murmured. They met 2 days later at Riverstone Park, a quiet place near the lake. The sky was gray, the air cool, and the sound of water lapping against the shore felt almost comforting. Maya arrived first. She sat on a wooden bench, hands folded in her lap, trying to steady the rhythm of her heart. When Daniel walked up, she almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, like a man who had aged years in just a few weeks. He gave her a small, polite nod. Thank you for meeting me. She nodded back. Thank you for coming. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was understanding. Two strangers tied together by the same wound. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. I heard about what happened at the hotel. Maya's eyes lowered. So did everyone, she whispered. He exhaled deeply, rubbing his face. Lydia told me everything. She said it was an accident. Maya looked up then, her voice calm but cold. Accidents don't come in sealed boxes, Daniel. A painful silence followed. Then Daniel nodded. Yeah, he said softly. I figured that. The music fades into a soft guitar, reflective and slow. They sat in silence again, watching the water. After a long while, Daniel spoke. I spent nights wondering what I did wrong. If I didn't love her enough. If maybe I pushed her away somehow. Maya looked at him, really looked at him. She saw in his eyes the same exhaustion she carried. The same ache of being not enough for someone who promised forever. It's not your fault, she said gently. And it's not mine either. Some people break what's good just to feel alive. And when they do, we're the ones who bleed. Daniel nodded, his jaw tightening. I know, but it still hurts. Every day. I know, she said again. Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't look away. The truth is, I thought revenge would make it better. But it didn't. It just made me colder. He looked at her with quiet surprise. You did what I couldn't, he said. I just walked away. Maya smiled faintly, but there was no pride in it. I didn't walk away. I burned the bridge. Now there's nothing left to cross. For a while, they just sat there, two broken hearts sharing the same air. And then Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded photo. Him and Lydia, smiling years ago, before everything fell apart. He looked at it for a long moment, then handed it to Maya. She used to be my whole world, he said quietly. Now she's just a memory I'm trying not to hate. Maya looked at the photo, then at him. I used to think I couldn't live without Ethan, she whispered. But now, I'm learning that I can. And maybe that's the real healing. Realizing the world doesn't end just because someone stopped loving you. Daniel's eyes softened. That's beautiful, he said. Painful but beautiful. The music shifts, gentle piano mixed with wind. As the sun began to set, Daniel stood up. I don't know what comes next, he said. But thank you, Maya, for telling me the truth. It hurts, but it's better than living with lies. She stood too, looking at him with quiet respect. Thank you for listening. They shook hands, firm, steady, human. It wasn't the start of something new, not yet. But it was the first honest moment either of them had shared in a long time. As Daniel walked away, Maya sat back down on the bench, staring at the fading light on the water. The city hummed softly in the distance, and for the first time in months, she felt free. Not happy, not healed, but free. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, Maybe peace isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you build, one truth at a. The days after the meeting in the park felt strangely peaceful. For months, Maya's life had been a storm, betrayal, pain, rage, revenge. But now there was quiet. She had moved into a small apartment on the edge of the city. One bedroom, white curtains, and a tiny balcony that overlooked a line of maple trees. It wasn't much, but it was hers. No more pretending. No more lies. Just silence and the sound of her own breathing. In the beginning, the silence scared her. She wasn't used to being alone. The nights felt endless, the bed too wide. But little by little, she began to fill the emptiness, not with noise, but with herself. She painted again, something she hadn't done in years. She took long walks by the lake, where she used to meet Ethan for coffee before work. She even started smiling at strangers in the market. Every small act felt like a victory. Every breath, a quiet rebellion against the pain that once owned her. Scene shifts. Maya at her small dining table, reading a message on her phone. It was from Daniel. Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. She smiled faintly and typed back. Trying. One day at a time. Their conversation started simply, small check-ins, messages about work, or quotes about life they found online. But slowly, those words became longer, warmer, more open. Daniel told her about how he was trying to learn to cook, how he burned pasta twice, but still felt proud of himself. Maya laughed at that. It felt good to laugh again, not politely, not to hide pain, but truly laugh. They didn't talk about the past much. They didn't need to. It was there, unspoken, understood. Weeks turned into months. One evening, Daniel invited her to meet him at a small art gallery downtown, the kind of quiet place where people spoke in whispers. Maya hesitated at first, but something inside told her to go. When she arrived, Daniel was already there, standing in front of a painting of a cracked vase, held together by golden seams. It's called kintsugi, he said when she joined him. It's a Japanese art. They repair broken pottery with gold. The cracks don't disappear. They just become part of the story. Maya looked at the painting, her eyes softening. That's beautiful, she whispered. Daniel nodded. Yeah, I think we're all like that, broken, but still worth something. She turned to him and smiled gently. Maybe even more beautiful because of the cracks. Their eyes met for a moment, not with passion, but peace. A kind of peace that only two people who've lost everything can understand. Scene fades. Maya walking home under city lights, her voice soft as she narrates. Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in whispers, in quiet mornings, shared laughter, and long walks with people who see your scars and don't flinch. Back in her apartment, Maya made tea and stood by the balcony, watching the night sky. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to look back. The bitterness that once filled her heart had melted into something gentler, gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, for the strength she never knew she had, for the fact that she had survived. Ethan's memory no longer hurt. It was just a story she had lived, one that had taught her what kind of love she would never accept again. She didn't need closure from him, because closure had come from within. Scene shift, weeks later at a park. Daniel and Maya sit side by side, watching children play. They weren't a couple. They didn't even talk about the future. But their presence beside each other was enough. They sat in silence, sharing the same small smile, the same quiet understanding. No grand promises, no forevers, just the peace of being seen. Daniel looked at her and said softly, You know, Maya, maybe the best kind of love isn't the one that makes your heart race. Maybe it's the one that lets your heart rest. She smiled, eyes glistening. I think you're right. Soft instrumental fade out. Maya's voice narrates as the screen darkens. Pain had broken me, but it had also rebuilt me. Not into who I was before, but into someone stronger, quieter, and real. Sometimes life doesn't give you happy endings. It gives you peaceful ones. And maybe that's enough.